think we can all learn to pay closer attention to the world around us and to ourselves as we move through this world. I think we often almost neglect how bizarrely miraculous this existence truly is. You're this highly sophisticated, intelligent being, a Homo sapien, as we're called, with all sorts of weird and complex faculties, this ability to think, to speak, to perceive, to feel, to sense. And yet we all become so normalized to it, so well acquainted, and we forget how miraculously complex and beautiful it all is. We forget to see really the balance and the intricate complexity of reality and nature, this nature which surrounds and situates us. People often only really think about these sorts of things when they're really high, when they're stoned or altering their consciousness. And this is when they're really zooming out and contemplating the grandest scales of existence. It's when we are in these sort of altered states of consciousness where we ask the big questions, the questions that we often sweep under the rug and neglect to ask when we're just swept up in life, when we're just moving from one thing to the next and driven by this insatiable need to achieve and consume. When we're in this sort of egoic way of living, we're constantly rushing to the next thing, and we're not really truly seeing what is, what is directly in front of us. Our attention is, and our mind is almost captivated by this mythology of progress, a story that we tell ourselves about who we are and where we're heading to, with this endless array of goals and tasks and whatnot. And I'm not saying this to suggest that we should abandon our ambitions or retreat from our responsibilities. There is certainly a value in goals and in this sense of movement, this sense of striving, but there should be a balance, a conscious awareness of the world's inherent mystery, the magic of it staring back at us. And we need to keep this at the foreground of our mind. And I'm not just doing some sort of weird mindfulness platitude. I'm calling for you to really look at it. Look at this experience. And this act of looking, it's unsettling, obviously, sometimes, because we are becoming acquainted with who we truly are, not what we have told ourselves about ourselves, not the story that we've sort of constructed to live within. Sometimes people can do what's called a mirror meditation. And in fact, when one is on a psychedelic trip, looking in the mirror is often advised against. But it's advised against because it's can be a very intense psychological experience. Because looking in a mirror, particularly when you're on a mind-altering substance, it will really orient your mind and your experience to you, in a kind of self-confrontation. And it's will cause all sorts of questions to arise within your consciousness, such as, who am I? How have I reached this moment in time? Where am I headed? And it's comfortable almost to ignore these questions. It's comfortable to ignore a truly honest appraisal of ourselves because it threatens to shatter the illusions that we carefully maintain. We fear really meeting the shadow within, the parts of ourselves that we repress because they do not align with who we wish to be. And we fear discovering who we truly are. We fear discovering our capacity to cause harm, our capacity towards selfishness, of failing to be the person which we imagine ourselves to be. But this avoidance, it doesn't serve us. I think it's healthier and in the long term easier to to really move towards a honest and positive self-image, regardless of the imperfections that you hold. You know, true growth will always come from questioning, from facing this friction, this discomfort, and from noticing when our actions, our thoughts, and our words, when they stray from what we conceive to be our highest values. In order to grow, it's very important to confront these limitations of yourself, to confront the areas of your life and your being where you are not reaching the ethical standards which you set for yourself. And this movement towards healing and moving towards a more ethical way of being in the world, not just for yourself, but just for others, it often will lead to a kind of rejection of the norms and values that are conventional in our society. You see, our society often glorifies egoic self-interest. It packages it as career ambition, a career focus, success, materialistic success rather, and it encourages and glorifies this narrow pursuit of money, of status, of self-advancement, self-improvement. And it's many people, they work for institutions and companies and organizations which just narrowly value profit, shareholder returns over meaning. And many people are forced to put food on their table to work for such an institution, and it carries with it a kind of internal compromise, it's just, what really motivates us, is it money? Is it power? Is it a desire to be admired, to be seen as valuable or attractive? It's all external, right? And when we just pursue only external symbols of value, you lead yourself into a sense of being which is hollow. There's no internal there. There's nothing inside. It's this pursuit of status which many people move towards, or a pursuit of just pleasure. It's a very superficial way of being, and it's a very fragile sense of being. I think really the most profound source of meaning can only be found in knowing oneself. And I'm not saying knowing the ego, not knowing yourself in a biographical sense, but by really understanding the essence of who you are. And this self-knowing, as you peel back the veil of who you are, you come to explore how it is you relate to the world. Much of life is relational. It's a web of interactions, connections, and community. And we all naturally seek relationships which bring peace, which bring meaning, which bring flourishing, not just for ourselves, but for those that we care about. It's if we think about what karma is, karma at its heart is a reflection of cause and effect, an act of selfishness. It will cause these selfish ripples outwards. And if you act selfishly, your world will almost become shaped to be a selfish, a hostile, and indifferent world. Whereas if you think and if you cultivate within yourself a disposition towards doing good acts, acts which are motivated by love, you will draw and attract similar energies into your life. And this is a very subtle thing, and it relates to how much of our individual worlds are functions of the way in which we are seeing the world. If we see the world in terms of good, our attention will be fixated towards seeking out those sorts of things. Whereas if we see the world in terms of threat, in terms of fear, in terms of what we can get, you will construct and see a world which affords you that, but it's not a world which nourishes you. It's a scary world, really, that you will find yourself in. You know, our world, it seeks to keep us separate, fearful, isolated, and trapped in survival mode. This is a way of controlling populations, really, that governments and intelligence agencies do. And so, really, like, as individuals, as human beings who are facing such a world, we are forced into the task of breaking free from this conditioning in order to truly grow, in order to truly awaken. And suffering in this context it is a doorway for awakening. It's a doorway towards confronting what it is that is holding you back. And when you can confront this suffering and understand what it is, and it allows you to connect with others who are suffering as well. I think people who have never truly suffered in their life, they've almost been denied this real deep catalyst for growth. And I guess to bring this to a kind of conclusion, I suppose I want for this sort of channel, this podcast, to really be a place for people, like-minded people, who are interested in sources of meaning which transcend just simple egoic goals. I want to create really a space where, for people who desire something genuine and meaningful, because I think there is a space for creating in the world where your motivation is not ego, it's not the pursuit of status or power, but it's a simple act of love, really. It's a simple creation which is done simply out of reverence for life itself. And it's a act which is moved by the most potent force there is, which is self-knowing, which is transformed into love, And as you do this, when you act in the world, and you're not motivated by what you may get out of it, but you're motivated simply by just reverence and gratitude for the act itself, you are kind of, it's just, I don't know how to describe it with words, but I don't know, it's a sense of doing, but the striving is for compassion, it's for peace, and there's a profound stillness to it. And you know yourself to be just here, just truly here, But I'll leave that at that. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and goodbye.